Welcome back. Dale Myers with Vision Advance. We're going to talk about the difference between an LLC and a sole proprietorship and perhaps get you thinking about which one is right for me. First, let's throw out my disclaimer. I am not an attorney nor an accountant. You should always seek professional advice. Having said all of that, these are some things you might want to consider. So both of these are forms of doing business, and they come with pros and cons, but in many instances they are very, very similar. An LLC stands for Limited Liability Corporation. It's not the same as an S Corp or C Corp. We'll do another video on that soon. And there are other forms of business, limited partnerships, but today we're going to talk about these two. Now, things that we need to consider. Taxation and legal perspective. So I mentioned I'm not an attorney nor an accountant, but there are real implications from which form of business structure that you choose. So we're going to discuss these, and let's start with the net income. When you make money, and we are in business to make money, the amount that you make passes through to your taxes in both of these forms. Now you have to set this one up correctly, and there's some technical details involved in that. But all of the money you make in your business passes through to your personal income taxes. So in this case, both of these guys are just about the same, and I state just about the same because a sole proprietor, sole means one, just you. But in an LLC, you can have a single member LLC or multiple members of the LLC. And if you say that you have a partner, you each own 50%, then 50% of the net income passes through to your taxes. This can be huge because, again, if you start making good money, that's a lot that you got to show for it. Now, I said income, but it's also the expenses. You can deduct the expenses, your business expenses. All of them can be deducted on your tax return in both forms. But here again, if you have multiple members, you deduct the percentage. If you're 50%, you get 50% of the income and expense deduction. If you're 20%, something similar. So they're kind of very similar in this vein. Startup costs. You can form your own LLC. I don't necessarily recommend you do it. I've done it several times now, so let me be totally honest. But going to an attorney that specializes in startups can really help you here, and it'll cost you $1,000 to $1,500, right? That's on average. So, so startup costs, that's about $1,000 to $1,500, unless you do it yourself. Whereas the LLC is just about free, so we're gonna give them a victory here. And not the LLC, the sole proprietorship is just about free. What you need to do, I mean, really, you don't really have to do a whole bunch, except go to, now again, every state is different here. But in general, you need to go to your city or county clerk and form a DBA, doing business as. The DBA basically ensures that no one else is operating under the same name that you are. It gives you the ability to now go and get credit cards or bank accounts in the name of the business. So, okay. So, and again, this would be a low cost, nothing compared to this. But I will state again that this isn't a huge cost in the overall scheme of things. But if you are starting off, recently fired or just don't have it, then you do what you have to do. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I can say that. Liability protection. Note, I have a star over here. This one is huge. An LLC gives you liability protection. That means if the business does something wrong, you cannot be personally held liable for it. They can sue your business. They cannot come after your personal assets. They cannot seize your personal bank account. They cannot just, affect your personal credit. All right. So On the other hand, sole proprietorship, you don't have those protections. If the business goes to court, that's really you going to court, meaning your assets are at risk. This one is huge. So notice I said startup costs, it's a win. But because the LLC is head and shoulders above the sole proprietor in terms of protecting you from some form of legal ramifications, the long-term costs, the LLC will win every time. Well, I shouldn't say every time, because of course if you're never sued, but if so, in many of my previous videos I talked about entrepreneurs, it's about managing risk. So you better be clear here. What business are you in and what is the risk in terms of liability protection? The most recent business, well, long-term business I started was back in 2010. I started a tutoring company. I was working out of libraries. There were plenty of people around. There wasn't a whole lot of risk associated with that. So again, I didn't initially start up. I started off just sole proprietorship. Later on, I went to LLC. And I did that because I went to the LLC when I decided I'm ready to open up my own office. And it may be me or just me and one other adult, or again, me and a couple of students. If someone says he said something inappropriate or whatever, now all of a sudden I'm at risk. My business is at risk. It was a heightened level of risk, so I went for more liability protection. You need to be thinking along those lines. Manage the risk. So long-term costs, I think that the LLC is a win, because this represents hundreds of thousands of costs or millions of liability protection. It's worth it. A little bit of little more upfront cost. All right, EIN number, employer identification number, tax ID number. So I don't know. This isn't necessarily a win one way or the other. If you're a sole proprietor, you could just use your Social Security number. All right. If you get employees though, which means you're kind of no longer a sole proprietor, that's when you need the EIN. So this one here isn't a check or not. This is just, I wanted to throw that out there at you. You really need the EIN when you're going to have some employees. And now with the LLC, you're definitely going to have one. But you can technically still use your Social Security number. I wouldn't, because again, the other thing about the LLC is it gives you more, I guess, it makes you more official in the eyes of banks and things. So when you're trying to establish the business credit, not that you can't do it as a sole proprietor. So I'm not saying that you can't. But so having said all of that, net income, kind of a balance. There in terms of taxation, there's not a huge difference. Now again, feel free, any of you tax attorneys, chime in below, correct me if I'm wrong. And again, with the understanding that it varies state by state here in the United States of America. But they are very similar. LLC and sole proprietor are very similar in terms of taxation purposes, with the few exceptions that are laid out earlier. Startup costs, almost negligible, except whatever expense you have with your DBA, your doing business as a sole proprietor. You can start up, like here in Georgia where I'm located, with the LLC, you pay $100 fee, and you can set up your own with minimal paperwork, doing it all online. You pay a $50 annual registration fee, and that's not too huge. Liability protection, hands down, slam dunk, touchdown for the LLC. Long-term costs, because of the liability protection and minimizing the many risks of business, because you guys know we live in a litigious society. The LLC wins this one. And again, the EIN number, if you need it, you're going to hire employees, you'll need that. So that's just a brief overview. Again, I will be doing another one soon on LLC versus regular corporations. Maybe we may talk about proprietorship. LLC has become the most popular form of business in America for good reason. It offers many other protections as a large corporation without as much of the red tape that comes along with a large S or C Corp. So anyway, leave a comment below. Which form have you chosen and why? My name is Dale Myers with Vision Advance. As always, let's get back to work, serving our families, serving our communities. Thank you for allowing me to serve you. Y'all take care.